Okay, everybody, Darren Stubbs here, sitting with Devin and Raymond. We're going to do a little training on the in-home presentation. We've got the selfie stick wired to a chair here, trying to make this work out. So I'm going to do a couple different variations of how I do my in-home. Obviously, when you get there, you answer the door. Oh, hi, you must be John, and you must be Susan. Nice to meet you. The basics. You walk in the house, just like Tony and everyone else teaches. You're building some basic rapport with people. Whether it's a football jersey, whether it's a flag, the Navy, plants, flowers, whatever it is, just find some kind of common ground that you meet with those people on. And then from there, I always go right towards the kitchen table. And yesterday I had an appointment, and they had a bunch of stuff in the living room, and they kind of wanted to sit in the living room, and I could see the kitchen table was just in the other room. I said, hey, do you mind if we just go to the kitchen table, because I have a few things I want to write out. And I just started walking towards the kitchen table. And of course, they sat down and followed me in there. The other thing, too, that's very important as you are working with folks is never have them sit across from you like you're playing a tennis game or a ping pong match, because you're subconsciously saying no. Every time you look back and forth, you're saying no. So what you want to do is you want to triangulate, have them sit at one side at the end of the head of the table and the person at the other side, so you're in a triangle with them. And you can always keep them in a non-conflicting way by having them sitting in a triangle, okay? So that's really, really important. Then what I do after I sit down is I thank them. Hey, first off, thank you for letting me come out to visit with you today, and I really appreciate it. And before we start, I'd like to get your permission. Is it okay with you if we have an open and honest, full disclosure conversation? And then just wait for them to answer yes. And then they say yes, and then I point to my chest where I have my little name tag, Symmetry Financial, and I say, well, because as a field underwriter, every day I talk to people about things that most people don't want to talk about. Death, dying, cancer, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, organ failure. And I try to remember from my phone interview that if they have a disease, I make sure I drop in their disease in the middle of all those things. And telling them, not talking about it is not going to make it go away. So I just appreciate the fact that we're going to be able to talk openly, and hey, we're going to talk about death for the next 45 minutes and maybe get them laughing a little bit and lighthearted. So I want to change the camera down here so you can see this. So give me just 1 second to move the camera down. Devin, you're right on there. Hold on 1 second here. We're going to aim down because most of this is about what we're going to draw. Okay, so the next thing I do is I pull out a clean copy of the lead sheet. And then what I do is I slide that lead sheet across the table towards the couple, and I ask them, okay, now let's see here, whose handwriting is this? Looks pretty neat. Is that your handwriting, Susan? And they say yes or no, or John might say it's my handwriting. Okay, great. And I say, well, let me ask you something. As you're looking at this, and hand gestures are very important, okay? As you're looking at this and you fill this out, what was kind of the main reason as to why you sent this back in? And then I wait and let them tell you. Yesterday's appointment was very simple. Al was 10 years older than Mary. And he says, I know I'm going to die before she is. And I want to make sure that if something happens to me, she's taken care of. So it was a very easy way to invoke that emotion. Why? You want to start the appointment out, why are you asking me to come out here? Why did you fill this form out? And a good thing to do at that point is to compliment him and say, that's really awesome, John. That says a lot about you. And then turn and look to the wife and say, Susan, you got a good man right here. Because that's the same thing he told me on the phone. He told me he wanted to have protection to make sure that if something happens to you, that you're taken care of, and he doesn't have to worry about it. And that's really a good thing. And then what I do is I take the lead and I say to them, okay, well, this is worth taking a few minutes, and that's why we're here to talk about mortgage protection insurance. And then I flip the lead over, okay? So I've got my copy of the lead over here to the side with my notes, but then a clean copy, the back side of the lead, is where I write the entire presentation. Now, I can write upside down, so I start out with my presentation like this, and this is basically what I write. I draw a little house. And I tell them, okay, please forgive me for my little third grade drawing representing your house. And I kind of draw an arrow down, and I can look up and say, okay, based on this, your mortgage looks like it's about $132,000. Because why do we know that? It's right there on the lead sheet, or it's down here on the corner on the lead sheet. So that's where we know that. And then oftentimes I've looked up their address and I've gotten an appraised value from Trulia or Zillow, so just an approximate amount. And I'll say, okay, well, what do you think your home is worth? And they'll say, oh, it's worth about $203,000. So I write that on there, and I draw some dollar signs. I say, okay, so basically, right now, looks like you're sitting on about $70,000 of equity. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because these are the exact numbers from the appointment I just closed yesterday. So we talk about that and say, okay, the idea behind mortgage protection is to make sure that if something happens to either of you, that you don't lose the equity in home, and the surviving spouse has everything taken care of, and enough money to pay all of the bills. And then I do something very important. It's a very important hand gesture. I say, because if you think about old life insurance, and I always signal away from the couple. So if the couple is sitting this direction, I always use my hand and I signal the opposite direction. Because what I'm creating is us and them. Us meaning I'm here as a trusted advisor with you, and them could be the bank, or them could be an old life insurance policy. It's a subliminal way of creating you in their circle of trust. So then I write down and say, well, if you think about old life insurance, it really ought to be called death insurance, because it only pays when you die. And you wait for them to complete the sentence. You wait for them to say when you die. And that's right. And then I write a D here and I say death. And I say, okay, we're going to use an example of $150,000 today. So basically, mortgage protection insurance, that part of mortgage protection insurance is the same as old life insurance. Again, that hand gesture. If you die, John, we're going to make sure that we get a cashier's check to Susan for $150,000. Or, Susan, if you die, we're going to make sure John gets a cashier's check for $150,000. And you stop for a minute and say, what does it look like, Susan? If John doesn't come home tomorrow because he gets in a car crash, what happens to your family if you lose his income? What does that look like? Then you wait. And it's that moment of uncomfortableness that you have to learn to get comfortable with. When you feel the tension growing at the table, you have to stay calm, low, and slow, and let that moment just kind of percolate a little bit. Let it brew. Let her say, well, it would be devastating. It would be terrible. We would lose our house to foreclosure. We wouldn't have enough money. And I say things like, most people can only go 2 or 3 months and they'd be headed towards foreclosure. And you guys are sitting on $70,000 of equity in your house. And so the bank might look at that and say, wow, hey, we don't have enough money to pay the payment because my husband is sick. He's got cancer. And of course, what's the bank going to say? Well, we don't care, because they want that monthly payment, right? So we all know what the banks have done over the years. If you don't pay the payment, they will foreclose and take your house away. So mortgage protection insurance, the death part, that's the same. But here's where it gets a little different than old life insurance. Again, you can use the hand gesture. Old life insurance. One, what if you have a terminal illness? Okay, John, what if you get so sick, the doctor says, hey, it doesn't look good. You have liver failure, you have lymphoma, you have cancer, you have a aortic valve problem, you're not going to make it. You're going to die in the next 12 months. What would that be like for your family? And you wait.
Devastating.
Yeah, devastating. They say devastating. So I say, well, okay, with the mortgage protection program, now, of course, depending upon which program it is, so American Amicable is 100% of the money. Forrester's is 96% of the money. The Mutual of Omaha Term Life Express is 80% of the money. So I just say, well, basically, we're going to give you most of this money, and I might write down $125,000, depending upon which program, which carrier that I'm presenting. But the idea is, John, you have $125,000 now. While you still have your mind, while you still have your faculties. And then you guys can sit down and decide, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to pay off most of the house, half of the house? Because maybe the surviving spouse, if you made a $100,000 principal payment and refinanced the house, the survivor would only be paying a $300 a month mortgage payment, and that survivor could survive on that and make all the bills. Or, I don't know, take care of the funeral, go to Vegas, do that trip with the kids. It's your money. The point is we don't actually pay off the mortgage. We give the money to you, and you do what you want to do. So you put the money into your checking account, because this program has 100% self-direction. Hey, zoom out, it's blurry. Has 100% self-direction. And it's important that you tell the client that they have the option to choose what they want to do with the money. That we don't actually give the money to the mortgage company, that we give the money to them, they put it into their checking account, and then they get to choose what they want to do with the money. Okay, that's good, thanks. We're just adjusting the camera there, sorry about that. Now, the next thing I say, okay, well, what if you become critical ill? Critical illness. What if you have cancer, heart attack, stroke, liver failure, kidney failure, but you're not going to die, but you can't work for the next year? What does that look like? How long could you go, John, with if your whole life is going down to St. Luke's for kidney dialysis twice a day for the next year, or chemotherapy or radiation for the next year and a half? What would happen with the house? How would you make the house payment? And of course, most people capitulate and say, well, we'd be in big trouble. Okay, well, here's how this works. You know, you could say, hey, I need $30,000, or I need $50,000. Great, you can access the critical illness out of your program, and we'll give you a cashier's check for $50,000. Same as before with the terminal illness. We don't pay the medical bills, we give you the money. We put the money into your checking account. You have 100% self-direction. You decide which bills you're going to pay. So go ahead, pay the house payment, and I use a hand motion, pay the house payment. I point towards the refrigerator and I say, put some groceries in the refrigerator. I point towards the garage and say, take care of the cars and the auto insurance and the gas and the kids' expenses. And, something else too. What if you needed in-home nursing care? You ever look at how much that costs? That's a couple $1,000s a week, real fast. So the idea behind critical illness is if you had something terrible happen, you're not dead, but this is a living benefit, so therefore you can access it out of your program. Now, again, if you had a $150,000 program, right, and we gave you $50,000 out of your program, how much would be left in there?
100.
Well, $100,000. Okay, so you're great from cancer, you go through your chemotherapy for 6 months or a year, you don't die, you're still alive, but we already gave you $50,000. So you still have $100,000 in your program. So basically you died 20 years from now, then we would take the balance, the $100,000, and that's what we would give to your wife or to your husband. Now, the next one is chronic illness. A little bit different definition. So critical illness is a big old long list of diseases. Chronic illness is basically, all of us right now, we live a normal, active daily life. We can eat, we can shower, we can go to the bathroom, we can take medication, we can walk, we can take care of ourselves. So chronic illness could be triggered either by an illness, an injury, or an accident. And this is a great time to tell a story. I talk about a story about a client who fell off and cracked his head on the concrete, hanging his Christmas tree lights, was in the hospital for several months, $48,000 cashier's check to the wife. The wife paid the bills, their credit is still perfect. The good news is the husband recovered, but they didn't go into foreclosure, took care of their 3 boys while he was in the hospital for an extended number of months because he was chronically ill. He could perform 0 of the 6 daily activities because he was in a coma for several months. But that saved their family. And it's the same type of thing. So, for example, if it's Mutual of Omaha, it's 80% based on the factors of how they calculate it. If it's Foresters, it's 24% per year up to 4 years, which would be a total of 96%. Now, I don't share this with every client. I'm just sharing this on the video training because if I'm selling Foresters, then I only write down the Forester numbers for terminal illness, critical illness, and chronic illness. If I'm showing them Mutual of Omaha Term Life Express, then I only show the numbers for Mutual Omaha Term Life Express, which is 80% across the board. It's very easy. So I explain the difference between chronic and critical. Then I draw a little line right there. I say, okay, then we have an add-on. 4, what if you died in an accident? Accidental death. In most cases, I put $100,000 on there. Now, this could be Gerber, AD&D, or it could be Foresters, or it could be Mutual of Omaha. I usually sell Gerber, and I say, okay, so if you have a $150,000 base program, and you die in an accident, there's another $100,000, that means we'd be giving your spouse $250,000. And then the last one on here is dismemberment, which most people don't like to talk about. But what if you lost your hand, or a foot, or your eyes, or your vision, or both hand, or both feet? You could get up to $100,000 for that. In fact, I had a client in Apache Junction, Arizona, chainsaw off his hand. I took him a $50,000 cashier's check. Again, tell a story. And then I say, okay, so can you see here how mortgage protection insurance is so much more than old life insurance? And again, use that hand gesture, old life insurance, how this is so much more. And they usually say, yes, okay, does that make sense to you? Okay, great. Now, what I did for you, and I flipped the paper around, I draw a line, is I came up with 3 options. Full coverage, in this case we're going to do $150,000. 2 is partial coverage, which is anything less than that. And I just did $100,000 here. And then 3, we did critical period. And I did $75,000. Now, John, I want you to understand, I picked these numbers. I chose these numbers. So I'm going to write the monthly numbers here in a moment, but before I do that, I want you to know that if you see a number you don't like, you just tell me, because I can change it right here, right now. And I do this little thumb thing. I can go up, I can make it go down, and usually I grab my cell phone and show that I can calculate, but right now my cell phone's doing video, so I can't show that little prop line here. Okay, let's try it this way. Maybe you can't see my little thumb gesture. Let's try it that way. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I can use my phone. I can recalculate it right now. So I just let people know that there's a way that we can change the numbers right here, right now, if they see a number they don't like. And I ask them, again, that sounds fair enough, doesn't it? And they always say yes. I say, okay, well, here's how it works. So, John, your numbers are here, and Susan, your numbers are here. And so this is 187.23, and this is 126.49, and this is 89.42. And this is 147.14, 99.07, and 64.01. So then I say, okay, so if you do the full coverage, John, at $150,000, that's 187.23 for you and 147 for Susan. And partial, 100,000 would be 126 and then 98. And the critical period, 75,000. The idea there is that you can pay for the funeral expenses, and that's going to give you 6 or 7 or 8 years of all the expenses for the surviving spouse to pay all the mortgage payment, $89.64. And I set my pen down, I say, push it closer to the client. John, Susan, as you look at these 3 options, which one makes the most sense to you? Which one seems most suitable, affordable that you'd like to make application for? Yes, wait. I waited. I waited on purpose. Wait for them. Because sometimes they'll say, okay, well, this one for me and this one for my wife. Stop selling. Grab your paper application. I'm an e-application guy. I grab my computer. I whip out my a computer right there on the spot, and I start taking the application.
Assume the sale.
Yeah, just assume the sale. So, as I go through and I say, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 different programs. That's why there's a line here. So this is through Forrester's, a great company out of Canada, and this is actually through Gerber, the baby food company. And factored into this price is $10.45. So we're going to do 4 applications. So you have 4 programs, 2 from Forrester's or Mutual of Omaha, and 2 from Gerber for the accidental death and dismemberment. And then from that point, I just immediately take the application. I don't ask any more questions. I don't ramble on. I just say, okay, John, so what's your Social Security number? Now, half the time, I've set these up in the IGO pipeline, and I've already preset them up. I'm pretty good at it. I go pretty fast because I've done a lot of them. If you're doing paper applications, you can pre-fill out a lot of the application, like the address, the name, a lot of the pertinent information you already have. You can have pre-filled out so that you can go a little faster. Now, sometimes when people are looking at these numbers, right, and they keep pointing at the lowest one, and you can read their body language, and you can see that they're just not quite there. It's still a little too much. And I say, so, okay, all this, you understand all this about the critical and crime? They say yes. And you like the program? Yes, we like it. Okay, so it looks like it's just coming down to the number. So is this number still a little too much for you? And sometimes they'll say, yeah. I say, okay, well, great. Well, hold on one second. Let me show you 65,000, and let me show you 50,000. And then I'll write the numbers. I did that twice this week. And on the fly, right there at the kitchen table with my phone, because I download all of the apps right to my phone, I showed them the new numbers, and bam, bam, they bought. Because the first 3 options were too expensive. So when I gave them, so you always give 3, 1 carrier, 3 options. And if you can see that they just can't swing it, that this number over here is just a hair too much, then you come back and you only give them a binary choice, 2 more choices. And you kind of shorten the space between them. And the reason you give them 2 choices is because it allows them to save face. Most of the time, they're going to pick this one. Because they can say, okay, well, that's a total of $20 a month less, and we can swing that. So just be able to have this other option on the fly, ready to go. Because if you can't get over the hump, getting them some coverage is better than getting them no coverage. Okay? So that's the basic mortgage protection pitch. And what I'm going to do on a piece of paper is kind of go through what if we're doing the mortgage payment protection. So I'll talk about the house, and I'll talk about how it has death. And I sell a lot of the Mutual of Omaha Living Promise, so it has a terminal illness rider built into it. And I talk to them about, hey, John, you're 75. I know you want to be able to pay off the entire house, but there's just not enough money to pay off the entire house. You can't qualify. You're 75 years old. You're taking 4 medications, but this is what I can do for you. Here's what I came up for you. So John, for you, and Susan, for you, we have $25,000 over here. So this is 24 months. And we have $20,000 over here. So this is about 20 months. And we have $15,000. So this is 15 months. And I haven't put the prices yet. I say what this is going to do is $25,000 is going to give your wife 2 years of house payments. So when you pass, she has time to go through the mourning and grieving process, and it's going to give her 2 years, or a year and a half and change, or just a little more than a year. And then I write the prices down. 234, 197, and 167, and then whatever Susan's are, 184, and 141, and 109. Same thing. Okay, you look at these 3 options. Which one seems most suitable and affordable to you? And then you wait. And yesterday, they picked the $20,000 options, and I wrote them up. So that's my basic in-home pitch. I say the same thing every time. You don't have to write upside down. I learned how to write upside down years ago, and actually most people think it's a novelty. So it works very, very well for me. But if you're writing like this and then turning the paper like that, and then you're writing critical period and turning the paper like that, that can become a little distracting. But do what works for you. Unless you have the people sitting across from you, if you're a right-hander or if you're a left-hander, depending upon which way you are, you want to be able to control the presentation and not make it distracting. Outside of that, my best advice to you would be to, once you get them ready to go, just go ahead and fill out the paperwork. Don't ramble on. Have them tell them you're going to need the driver's license and a copy of a check. I tell people, look, I don't actually need the check. I just want to get the routing number and account number off of the check, and I'm going to copy it down right here. Again, I'm very, very big on e-apps. I would say 95%, 97% of what I do is on e-apps. I do not like paper. I know there's a lot of people that use paper, and that's fine, but paper gives you too many chances for mistakes. You missed a signature. You didn't get an extra qualification form or questionnaire form. If you get into the swing of doing e-apps, our 5 main carriers, they all use iGo Pipeline. So once you learn Foresters or Mutual of Omaha or National Life Group, United Home Life, they're all the same with slight variations once you get into that software. So hopefully this helps out. My goal was just to kind of give you a basic breakdown of different ways I do the in-home presentation. Again, I'm big on technology. I highly urge you to get on e-apps. The great thing, like, for example, Foresters, if you're doing an e-app, it has an instant decision on your term. Greg Bevan did one the other day. The email came to me at 8:33 p.m. They received the application, and at 8:36, 3 minutes, it was issue paid. That's the power of doing e-apps. You're not having to go home and scan 17 pieces of paper and upload all this BS. It's fast, it's quick, it's efficient, and you won't make mistakes. Now, in the beginning, if you're new, when you get appointed from the carriers initially, you have a provisional appointment with all the carriers, and you have to turn in one application on paper. Once you turn it on paper, then they're going to review and approve you to full appointment, and then you're allowed to do e-apps. So if you're new, you can't go right to e-apps, you got to do paper. But don't be afraid of the technology. Get on it. It's great. It's fast. It's efficient. And especially if you type pretty fast. I'm a laptop guy, so I take a laptop everywhere I go. I know some of you guys use pads and Apple and all that. That's not for me. But you do what works for you. But in terms of the presentation, stick to what we teach, to what Tony teaches, and Lisa, Eric, Zach, Kimberly, Greg Bevan, all the other top producers and agency owners. Don't deviate too far from the basic presentation, the concept. You go in with one carrier, and 3 options, and you do not need a bunch of illustrations and spreading out papers all over the kitchen table. You notice I took the lead sheet, I flipped it over on the back, and I wrote the presentation on the back of a clean lead sheet, and I gave them their 3 options and said, which one looks best to you? Okay, so that's my tip for Saturday. Hopefully that works out. You guys stay at it, stay on the calls, and just get better at the in-home. Take care. We'll see you in Vegas.